For the next 2 weeks, we are going to be evaluating and analyzing compare and contrast arguments. You're going to be using chapters 2, chapter 11, and chapter 29 to find first your thesis and roadmap instructions, and then to be looking at what makes a good comparison, contrast essay, and reading examples. We're also going to be using different forms, creating assignments, and doing discussion boards. So here are all the forms we'll be using, or starting to use. We'll also use those in weeks 7 and 8 throughout this entire unit. Now, the thesis is the roadmap for an essay. It's where an argument starts. In your book, Figure 2.1, it talks about visualizing the process, the way a thesis works. So, first of all, a good thesis is going to not only state your opinion, but create an argument. And create it in a single cohesive way. In the papers for this class, which are never more than 5 or 6 pages, you should always be able to get your thesis down to 1 sentence. Because then you're getting a focused, coherent idea that your audience can follow as you develop it through the different pages. Now, if you were writing a 20-page paper, you might have several sentences or even an entire paragraph that laid out the argument. But in papers this size, the amount of evidence you have, the amount of support you have, needs just a single sentence for the argument. And not only should it state the argument and wrap it up, it should show the reader the way you are going to go about making this argument. That is, if you line up your points A, B, and C in your thesis, they should follow A, B, and C in your paper. But if you line up the points A, B, and C, and then you end up going A, C, and then B, because that worked more organically, that carried the argument better, you just go back to the thesis and change it. You're not stuck to the thesis. The thesis instead should develop and evolve with the paper. Now, for a comparison-contrast argument, there are 2 basic styles, and these styles you can begin in the thesis. But the 2 different styles are the point-to-point and the block. Point-to-point evaluates each point for the 2 different either things that you're evaluating or 2 different arguments you're making. So point 1, if your thesis is Mom's Hamburger Haven is a better family restaurant than McPhony's because of its superior food, service, and atmosphere, then the points, food, service, and atmosphere, are moved point by point through the essay, and you evaluate Mom's, and then McPhony's, Mom's, McPhony's, Mom's, McPhony's for each one. For that same thesis, you could do a block essay in which you would evaluate food, service, and atmosphere for Mom's, and then food, service, and atmosphere for McPhony's. And notice how in each of them there's still that parallelism. You begin with food, move to service, then to atmosphere, so that the reader can follow the argument. Now, if you make a point-to-point, the compare-contrast is clear because you are moving from how do we do this at Mom's, how do we do this at McPhony's. But if you do it in this block form, you're going to need to link your reader back to points that you had made previously to remind them, because it might have happened 3 or 4 pages earlier and they've forgotten how the point you're making about food or service at McPhony's compares with the situation at Mom's.